Good afternoon. It's Friday. I'm Sal Greco, and you're watching and listening to the Sal Greco Show. If you're watching us on YouTube, please hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit the notification button. If you're watching us on Rumble, please hit the like button, hit the Rumble button, hit the follow button. And if you're listening on any major podcast streaming platforms, please like, share, and subscribe. Well, today we're going to hit some hot button topics. Obviously, Eric Adams is still in the news and what's going on there with his criminal case, his lawyer, President Trump. We have a few instances of New York City Police Department news, and we're going to cover all of that and more coming up on the Sal Greco Show. Show. We are going to discuss, of course, Eric Adams and the New York City Police Department, some news with that. But here to talk about this wonderful subject is somebody who's helped expose not only the hypocrisy of what's going on, but the Eric Adams administration itself and the New York City Police Department under Eric Adams. And that's Eric Dym, who's the co-host of the Finest Unfiltered podcast. Eric, welcome back to the Sal Greco Show. How you been, brother?
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure. The Finest Unfiltered, Sal Greco Show. Awesome. Love it, brother. You look sharp, by the way. I feel underdressed, but you know what? You look good. I like the pocket too. Impressive.
You know, I take my cues from some of the best in the business, you know, but what can I say? Well, Eric Adams was one of the best dressed men in Stone's list. On Stone's best dressed list, Eric Adams actually made it. So even as corrupt as he is, he still dresses really nice. I mean, all that corruption has to go somewhere, which is probably in his suits. Well, tailored suits, may I add. So we were talking about Eric Adams. Since we're leading in with that, I was going to read something off to you. As everybody knows, the DOJ, Trump's DOJ, apparently has dismissed Eric's charges with prejudice. So there's been a lot of chatter and a lot of things that have been going on behind the scenes. Recently, Eric Adams' lawyer, Alex Spiro, had a press conference or something where he made some statements. So this article comes from the Daily News. It says, Adams' lawyer calls criminal corruption case over despite potential for renewed prosecution. And this was written by Chris Sommerfeld. Mayor Adams' attorney, Alex Spiro, voiced confidence Wednesday that the mayor's public corruption case is over, even as President Trump's Justice Department has left the possibility of refiling his indictment as early as this fall. This case will never be brought back. It wasn't a real case in the first place, Spiro told reporters at his Manhattan office in his first public remarks since the Justice Department ordered that Adams' indictment be dismissed with some unusual caveats. Those caveats were spelled out in a memo emailed Bove, Trump's ex-personal defense attorney and now number 2 of the Justice Department, sent to the Manhattan U.S. Attorney's Office Monday night. Bove directed the office to dismiss Adams' indictment, charging him with taking bribes and illegal campaign cash from Turkish government operatives in exchange for political favors. But Bove also wrote that the Justice Department was taking no stance on the strength of the case against Adams in order that the next Senate-confirmed Manhattan U.S. attorney, likely to be Trump nominee Jay Clayton, launch a review after November's mayoral election to determine whether to re-prosecute Adams. In calling for the dismissal, Bove said Adams' indictment has unduly restricted him from helping Trump with immigration matters as the Republican president looks to target undocumented individuals in New York and elsewhere for mass deportations. Bove also argued that ex-Manhattan U.S. Attorney Damian Williams, who filed the indictment against Adams and then resigned before Trump's inauguration, attracted prejudicial publicity to this case, an assertion Spiro echoed Wednesday as he questioned whether Williams was motivated by greed or fame in bringing it. As of Wednesday evening, however, interim Manhattan U.S. Attorney Danielle Sassoon had yet to act on Bove's dismissal request. A spokesman for Sassoon didn't provide comment. Pam Bondi, Trump's newly minted Attorney General and Bove's boss, expressed surprise Wednesday night that Sassoon hasn't already filed a motion to dismiss Adams' case. That case should be dropped, she told reporters in Washington. I did not know that it had not been dropped yet, but I'll certainly look into that. The reference to immigration enforcement in Bob's letter has prompted legal experts and others to argue Trump is dangling a possibility of a future re-prosecution of Adams as a threat if he doesn't help the president enough with going after undocumented immigrants. The Reverend Al Sharpton, a longtime friend to Adams who holds significant political influence in the city's Democratic Party circles, on Tuesday compared the situation to Trump holding the mayor hostage. In his news conference, Spiro confirmed he has in recent weeks spoken privately with leaders in the Justice Department about the possibility of dropping the mayor's case. He also revealed that as part of those conversations, they talked about Adams' ability to deal with immigration enforcement and other issues. The equities of all this, including all the functioning of the government and the mayor's ability to enforce national security issues, terrorism threats, immigration, and everything else, his functioning, of course, came up, Spiro said. But Spiro vehemently denied making any commitments about specific immigration actions Adams would take in exchange for a dismissal, calling that notion absurd. This isn't hanging over anybody's head, he said. The case is over. I think everybody knows the case is over. Later Wednesday, Adams appeared in public for the first time since the Justice Department's bombshell order and was asked by reporters if he could assure New Yorkers he's not beholden to Trump. Look at the record, Adams said on his way into a town hall event in Queens. Look at what I have done. Now I have recovered this city. How we have fought for the safety of everyone in our care. There's nothing going to change with that. Since he was first indicted on bribery, fraud, and soliciting foreign donation charges in September, Adams has repeatedly maintained that his ability to do his job hasn't been affected. The mayor often points to drops in some crime categories as an indication that he has continued to be able to do his job well, even while under the indictment. But Spiro told reporters Wednesday that Adams' professional abilities were obviously affected by his legal woes. Obviously, if you indict the sitting mayor of New York City, who has lots of responsibilities for public safety, that has an impact on his ability to function, he said. Kayla Mamalik, Adams City Hall spokeswoman, didn't return a request for comment on whether the mayor agrees with his lawyer about that matter. This article was also written with Molly Crane Newman. Eric, what are your thoughts about reading that whole mishigas there? What's going on there?
Wow. So first of all, let's go to Eric Adams, right? So Eric Adams says that he brought the city back to where it needs to be, and it refers to public safety. This has been the perception management, I must say, coined by Marlon Bethel, member of the Finance Unfiltered family, when it comes to perception management or perception control. The bottom line is that Eric Adams and his administration has been trying to control the narrative during his tenure as mayor. And the narrative has been your reality of what you see is only your perception. And they've gaslighted the public. Now, I'm no fan of a former mayor, Bill de Blasio. Absolutely not. But I think we were actually in a better state of affairs under Bill de Blasio in comparison to Eric Adams. I think Bill de Blasio took us to the edge of the cliff, and I think Eric Adams took us off the cliff. And when I talk about an analogy, that's the state of affairs that we are in right now. Eric Adams appointed an administration based on nepotism and cronyism, and to me, it equates to corruption. And no longer could you actually say, hey, that's an hypothesis or that's an anecdotal experience observation. This is an observation that we're all making at this point. And Sal, you always talk about low information voters and or low information people. And sometimes I laugh. I think, it's like, wow, are there that many stupid people? But the reality is, whether you're in politics or not, and if you're paying attention or not, I think everyone has been awoken by the Eric Adams administration and saying, what's going on here? What's going on here? And that document is completely inaccurate, right? Because the actual letter in itself says that it would be without prejudice. So according to Alex Spiro, I think Alex Spiro is gaslighting the public also. He's taking the same page from Eric Adams to make people believe that no charges could come forward and that this is closure. This is no way, form, or shape that this is closure, because at any point they could come back with charges because it says it's without prejudice at the time. The question is, why are they doing this? So at this point, Donald Trump, you have to figure, right? He talks about the art of the deal. For Eric Adams, it would be the art of the steal. But at this point, I don't understand what the game plan is. I haven't figured out myself, but it's quite peculiar. And I think at this point, it's a sad moment right now. It's a sad moment for this country. And I think the message to our young children out there is become a politician. You can walk on water.
Yeah, I listen. I have been beating the drum on this over and over again. President Trump campaigned to drain the swamp. He was going to bring balance back to the rule of law, and there's not going to be any more political persecutions. And we're not. But Here you are literally doing exactly what your predecessor was doing and what you claim was done to you by just squashing something that's very serious. Many people have already pled guilty in this case and have become witnesses. And one of them in particular had stated that Eric Adams had told one of these co-conspirators, now turned into a witness, to not tell the FBI anything and don't worry, they can't find the cash. Now, that doesn't sound like somebody who's not guilty. That doesn't even sound like a mayor or somebody running for office. That sounds like a street thug acting like one. And, and to segue into the very next thing, which kind of has to do with this, in one retrospect here, President Trump and the DOJ is they're so wrong, it's almost borderline like corruption, criminal, all of that. And now there was another announcement by the Attorney General herself, Pam Bondi. Here it is. I posted this. I wrote, the Trump Justice Department is wrong about dismissing Eric Adams' federal criminal case, but U.S. Attorney General Pam Bondi is so right with this move. Great job by President Trump and the Justice Department. And here is an article. It was done at the time when it happened. And it said, DOJ announces lawsuit against New York, Hochul, and State Attorney General James over sanctuary status. And it says the Justice Department announced Wednesday it was suing New York State over its policy of limiting cooperation with federal immigration enforcement with Governor Kathy Hochul, State Attorney General Letitia James, and DMV Chief Mark Schroeder and Attorney General Pam Bondi's crosshairs. This is a new DOJ, Bondi announced. New York has chosen to prioritize illegal aliens over American citizens. It stops. It stops today. As you know, we sued Illinois, Bondi added. New York didn't listen, so now you are next. Last week, the Justice Department asked a federal judge to immediately strike down sanctuary policies in Illinois and Chicago, arguing state and local officials are an obstacle to the federal government's enforcement of the immigration laws and discriminate against federal immigration enforcement.
Well, it's no surprise that we got to this point, right, where we have the federal government and our state and local governments at odds with each other. And so, Sal, this is something that you speak about quite often. And I said, I remember when you first said it, I said, wow, that really resonates. It says, you know what? We're all concerned about who do we vote for on the federal level, but we need to be more concerned about our local level politics. And Sal, I think you were spot on when you said that, because the local level politics has a far more impact on your life, especially your quality of life, and how you reflect on businesses and real estate, and far more than the federal level. And the evidence-based information, right? We talk about evidence-based podcasts, given perspective based on evidence. It's front and center, where we see a memo, an operation order, and that is actually Operation Order 4. So if any of your audience wants to take a look, by the NYPD, where under the new police commissioner, who's now about 10 or 11 weeks into her tenure, put the NYPD at odds with ICE. And I think it's irresponsible, and I think it's reckless. And in that operation order, it indicates that being in this country is not illegal, it's not a crime, and that it's civil in nature. And it goes on further, that the NYPD will not work hand in hand with ICE when it comes to removing illegal military-age males. That's the bottom line. The public and the media want to give this perception that the Trump train and the Trump campaign is stormtroopers are just picking people off the street and removing them with just completely arbitrary. And that's not the case at all. When it comes to this point right now, we have a gang in this country called Tren de Aragua that is actually worth approximately $15 million. That comes from 8 separate countries in South America, from the spoils of jails. This is a highly funded organization that has now spread throughout the entire country with a focal point on New York City. Why not New York City? Of course, New York City. So welcome that, where we give food, we give shelter, we give an opportunity that if you commit crime, you probably will not face justice. That at the state level and the local level, they'll actually empathize more with you than local law enforcement. And that's where we're at this point. So we have Tren de Aragua that's really ripping through New York City, especially at the hub and the pivotal location for tourism, which is Times Square. And we have an NYPD, the most iconic police department, putting the NYPD at odds with ICE. And we call them federal partners. And to me, I never knew that partners are at odds with each other. They're not working hand to hand. I think it's completely irresponsible. It goes on further into Operation Order 4 to say that, hey, if ICE needs help, just as any other citizen, then the NYPD would step in. That's the only time the NYPD step in. That's absolutely ridiculous, where the NYPD should communicate and correlate with ICE based on information, because information leads to intelligence, and intelligence is information that could actually succeed to public safety. It's kind of ironic and it's a paradox, especially when Eric Adams says the prerequisite to prosperity is public safety. Not with Eric Adams' administration, not in this New York City.
I think you make really good points there, especially the fact that the NYPD had its own operational memo about how to go about this. The only issue here is that I'm having is how come Eric Adams is not named in this lawsuit, or the New York City Council. New York City Council put forth the legislation that was passed in New York City, and it restricts how the New York City Police Department can operate. Eric Adams can try to put an executive order. It would be challenged, but then all that constitutional crisis would be in front of a judge, where you want a judge to dissect what's federal, what's state, and what's local. Eric Adams has been a coward and never brought anything like this forward, much like the right to shelter law, which has been in and enacted for many, many decades, actually, never exactly states that you have to house undocumented illegal aliens. It states you have to shelter legal citizens. They are documented citizens. That's the law. Never stated anything about illegals, but Eric Adams never bothered saying a word, never challenging it. And by the way, he was welcoming them in like nothing. He loved having illegals in because he was making plenty of money with those migrant shelter contracts. Just ask his buddy, Tim Pearson, Mr. Crumbs himself, who was asking about where's his crumbs when it came to the migrant shelters. So I don't know what President Trump or his DOJ knows, but I'll tell you this. They're having a vote, actually they're having a court hearing where Eric Adams right now, he approves of 800,000 illegal immigrants voting in local city elections. What do you think about that, Eric? That bill, that was a bill that he didn't veto, that he was for. He was for illegal immigrants voting in local elections. What do you think about that? Is that Mr. MAGA Mayor? Is that on the Trump America First agenda?
Well, I always said Eric Adams was pre-indictment Eric, and then I say he's blue MAGA, because I think he was always blue, but when he was supporting Trump short term, because he was MAGA for a period of time trying to seek a preemptive pardon, or now he's at the point where the Department of Justice has dismissed the charges altogether. So Eric Adams, he really is a survivor. He's always winning, and he's winning at this point. And effectively, as the first indicted mayor of New York City, he could be reelected as the first indicted mayor of New York City. This is absolutely atrocious what's going on here with Eric Adams in the city. I just think that we're in spoils right now. I think the city's going into peril. I think we're at a point where it's not a viable place to live anymore in New York City with congestion pricing, with a city that's out of control. I mean, Eric Adams talks about public safety being the prerequisite to prosperity, and back and forth. We talk about this perception management. I just think it's out of control with Eric Adams. And I think it really is a sad day that we've gotten to this point. And to me, we're also telling the American people that we have a threshold. We now have a threshold with corruption. And this corruption seeps into this illegal, and that's why I want to bring us back. It seeps into this migrant crisis and these illegal military age males, because we talk about the appearance of propriety. There's every reason to believe that there's some type of private contract kickback from these hotels that we utilize to house illegal military age males and different types of migrants. So at this point, what does that equate to? 800,000 votes. That equates to a potential second term, which is what I'm talking about here. Why? Eric Adams won the primary in his first election with less than 500,000 votes. Think about that. A city of 8.5 million people. We talk about voter apathy. Eric Adams won the primary with less than 500,000 votes. So 800,000 illegals have the ability to vote. That solidifies it. That validates it. That's kind of like that's the hook, line, and sinker.
Yeah, he actually won that primary in the, I believe it was ranked choice voting or whatever they were doing at that time. He won by like 7,000 votes over the second place person in a Democratic primary. So, yes, having illegals vote in a local election would change it demographically, and also could change it one way or the other. It could be a tsunami. So, yeah, and he is the godfather of the illegal immigrants. He's the, what do they call him, the Papi Chulo of them? I don't know, but that's what Eric Adams seems to be. And then we have
Godfather 4?
Yeah. So, and then there's this entire, now I don't know if you've seen this, I'm going to put this up on the screen. There's an entire conspiracy theory by, get this one, Bill O'Reilly, who's came out of retirement or whatever old age home he's in right now, to come up with this wild conspiracy on Chris Cuomo's show. So I wanted to play this for you and get your thoughts on it.
Trump wants to get Letitia James and Alvin Bragg. That's what this story is all about. Nothing else there. He went after Illinois because he wants to get Pritzker. Hates him. And the way to do that is to deny the states of Illinois and New York the federal grant money. The New York Post reports today $8 billion is going to get held up by the Justice Department that would have flowed into New York State, which is running an astronomical deficit here. Okay. So the easiest way to do this is to file civil suits against the governor and the attorney general. Then the question was, why is the mayor of New York left out? Because he doesn't matter. He doesn't matter. Trump wants to get Letitia James. Hochul is just an ornament. Doesn't have any bad feeling toward Hochul, Trump. But Adams, the deal that was made, I don't know what Adams is giving Trump. I have to tell the audience up front. I don't know, and I don't use anonymous sources, but I got call after call after call that said, and all of these people have agendas who are calling me. They all have agendas, all right? And they're saying that Adams knows where the bodies are buried with James and Bragg. Just throwing it out for your consumption. I'm not reporting it to be true, but it kind of makes sense, right?
Well, it's kind of weird that, like, you can say he has no power, but he's in charge of the city. And when they went after Pritzker in Illinois, they named Chicago and they went after the mayor. Yeah, I'm just saying, if you're going after the city of Chicago, you name the mayor.
No, Johnson and Adams have no power whatsoever. None. They do what they're told to do. The real power lies in the state legislature. Now, in both Illinois and New York, the state legislature gives the big middle finger to Homeland Security. Because blank you, maybe Anderson Cooper could articulate it a little more than I am by using some vernacular, but that's what's happening. And the Trump administration knows that these mayors, this is like the utility infielder on the New York Yankees who plays maybe 3 innings a week. These guys have no power. They do what they're told to do. The big power is Newsom in California. Newsom's next. Hey, Gavin, they're coming for you. Pritzker's going to get destroyed, and Trump will bring down, and I'm going to predict it here, he will bring down Letitia James and Alvin Bragg because they went on a crusade to destroy him. And President Trump is not a forgiving man.
Eric, I know there's a lot this guy, Eric Adams doesn't matter. And, he knows the goods because the state legislation, the city council, Letitia James and Eric Adams were all, and the New York State Police Department upper echelon were all hanging out in the same nightclub every single night, every other night. So, he doesn't matter, Eric Adams. Not the fact that he is in charge of the city and makes all the final decisions there. He's in charge of Corporation Counsel, who is fighting tooth and nail. Right now, Trump's DOJ, but actually Trump's FEMA has taken away $80 million that was allocated for New York City in regards to migrant crisis issues. And it's Eric Adams' Corporation Counsel that ran up to Albany, and they're discussing how to fight that in court. But Eric Adams has nothing. He has no say. Eric, is there how many people are simping for this guy, Eric Adams? You got to wonder, did Bill O'Reilly hang out at Conso Frito with him? Well, I don't know. What are your thoughts?
Well, I do think Bill O'Reilly does raise some good points. And what he does make a hypothesis on, and it seems to be theory-based, right? He says at this point, it's pretty much conjecture. He doesn't have any solid evidence. He's got credible sources. So what I think he does lay out here is that this could be completely personalized, right? What he's saying is that Donald Trump wants to get to Letitia James because Letitia James did personally attack Donald Trump. What did she say? He's too pale, he's too stale, and he's too male. Do you remember that? Too pale, too stale, too male. And she said that numerous times when she spoke about Donald Trump. So I think Bill O'Reilly did hit the mark when he talks about how this could be personalized. So to me, that's also a question. Listen, I voted for Trump. I'm not going to deny it. But I don't agree in every aspect of Trump's administration and Trump himself, right? I believe in giving a fair perspective and an honest assessment. The overwhelming majority of his decisions I support at this time. But some of the questions, some of the decisions I question at this time. So could this be something that is personalized? Could it be we give Eric Adams a pass to get to Letitia James because it's a personalized issue? That may be so. Maybe that's the ploy to this. But if that's the ploy, I have a problem with that because we have a city, a city of 8.5 million people. So New York City makes up about half of the population of the entire state. So Eric Adams, in the grand scheme of things, he does have a lot of power. Yes, I understand what they talk about with local politics and actually, how much say he actually has. Yes, he doesn't have too much power. And sure, Kathy Hochul at most times is giving orders. But on the local level, Eric Adams has a lot of power, especially when it comes to New York City Council, and especially top heavy with the NYPD. And the NYPD is the most iconic police department. It's the largest police department in the entire country. And the dynamics of the politics of New York are quite different than other counties in this country. Because in New York, we have 5 boroughs. And those boroughs, each borough is its own county. So 5 counties that actually make up a city, which is different in the amount of funding that this city has in comparison, let's say Los Angeles County, right? He brings up California, where it's incorporated cities that make up a county. But in New York, it's 5 counties that make up a city. So it's far different dynamics. So I think that's where he's kind of missing the mark. So Eric Adams does have more power in that sense. And that's why it's reflective of what you said. When there's relationships with Letitia James and all these high prolific figures that are hanging around with nefarious characters at Casa Fritos in the Bronx and other places, but particularly that place where they all mingle and meet, there's a lot of information that is passed on. So to me, if this is the ploy, it seems completely personalized, and that's a problem, because now what we're saying is we have a threshold for corruption. We're going to allow Eric Adams to continue in his tenure, possibly get reelected, possibly continue this corrupt administration to get to a personalized attack from Letitia James. Now, I'm not saying he shouldn't fight back, but maybe there's a different way to skin a cat.
Yeah, I think that Letitia James would have issues if we just take a look at Sam Antar's X account and go to whitecollarfraud.com. He brings up a ton of financial issues, campaign financial disclosures. There's a lot of issues there, contributions, how the money was used. And I think you could nail Letitia James on that aspect. And if you go back to her days in the city council, I am sure with the 8-to-1 matching funds program that Eric Adams completely abused and took $10 million, Letitia James probably did some of the same, if not worse. But of course, now, how do you charge Letitia James with the very crimes you're letting Eric Adams skate on? Eric Adams doesn't really know what Letitia James does because Eric Adams is doing his own thing. And as far as Alvin Bragg goes, I could guarantee you Alvin Bragg was never seen at Casa Frito and is not part of that crew. So I don't know what or where Bill O'Reilly's pulling this theory. I think there's a lot of people that are hoping and wishing and gunning for things. But here are the facts that I could state unequivocally. Letitia James and Eric Adams and crew were hanging out with a mob associate, self-admitted criminal at a place run by the former police commissioner's brother, which has all kinds of problems. There's a human trafficking report. There were allegations of drug sales, or whatever could have happened. Basically, that's the allegation that's happened there. And it was there with the city council, state legislation, like Carl Hasely is assembly leader, and numerous people in the New York State Police Department, the upper echelon, and some underlings. That's a fact. We know this for a fact. We don't ever see anything to do with Alvin Bragg. We then know as a fact that Eric Adams violated numerous campaign laws, campaign finance laws, and he's quite possibly, from what I'm reading, a thug from the street, or even worse, a foreign national, which is what the case is really about. Letitia James, we know, has also violated laws because Sam Antos actually found it. These are facts. I stick to the facts. Conspiracy world is left to the conspiracy people, low information. This is trying to hook more low information people in, much like the hook line of Eric Adams was against the migrant crisis and all that nonsense, and that's built this whole political persecution thing. I always tell people, be very careful. Stick to the facts. Me and Eric were cops. That's what we did. Don't judge or do things based on your feelings. Go where the evidence leads to. There is no evidence of what Bill O'Reilly said other than Bill O'Reilly's looking for clicks. I know he hasn't been around a long time. He was replaced at Fox News by the much better and smarter Tucker Carlson. And I just think this guy wants to be relevant again. And he threw out something that's insane. And Chris Cuomo, who many people are not fans of, I don't like his politics, but I respect the guy. And he sat there and go, well, how do you sue the mayor of Chicago and not New York City? And he's right. I don't know what's going on there. And it may lead to nothing. And I don't take Bill O'Reilly's assertion that Kathy Hochul, oh, well, she's nothing. To him, it's all about Tish James. Everyone else doesn't matter. Forget what Eric Adams does. Forget that people know this guy. Forget about everything. It's just about Letitia James. That's why Bill O'Reilly was never a cop or a prosecutor or had anything to do with law. Thank God. So I'm going to jump into the next thing, which is about Eric Adams' buddy, his newfound buddy, which was Steve Bannon, and something had occurred. So this is an article penned by the Daily News. It's a little jaded, we'll say, but I'll still read it. It says, crooked Steve Bannon gets off easy. Trump Justice Department works against justice. Okay, and it was written by the New York Daily News editorial board. Donald Trump, who practically built his entire 2024 presidential campaign on the spurious grievance that Joe Biden has weaponized the Justice Department against him and his allies, is weaponizing his own Justice Department against his enemies and in service of his friends. We reintroduce you to one of the most odious creatures from the Trump swamp, Steve Bannon. Bannon, the professional right-wing populist firebrand who ran Trump's 2016 campaign and was Trump's first chief strategist as president, was charged with collecting millions of dollars for a nonprofit called We Build a Wall. While he promised that none of the money they donated would be used to pay the salary of the organization's president, Ryan Colfage, he secretly was funneled hundreds of thousands of dollars, according to prosecutors. Manhattan federal prosecutors built a strong case against Bannon, Colfage, and two others before the end of Trump's first term, which the president wiped away with a pardon on his final night in office. While Bannon escaped, the non-pardon trio went to federal prison for years. Manhattan DA Alvin Bragg and New York Attorney General Tish James then picked it up in 2022, indicting Bannon for fundraising fraud. They, too, had a strong case, but the prosecution was undercut when Trump's Justice Department stopped its cooperation. That, no doubt, put a thumb on the scale of justice. So Tuesday came a Pyrrhic win in Manhattan court. Bannon pled guilty to one felony count, getting a 3-year conditional discharge, meaning he'll face no punishment if he doesn't reoffend. He could have served years in prison like his buddies. And so Bannon's lawyer crowded, even as Bragg insisted that the deal achieved our primary goal, to protect New York's charities and New York's charitable giving from fraud. Bannon can't serve as an officer or a director in charities with assets in New York. He's on the naughty list, and that'll have to do for now. Now a nation that watches the Trump Justice Department runs roughshod over rules and norms and laws and court rulings simultaneously under Attorney General Pam Bondi targets former DOJ officials who prosecuted the January 6 rioters. This comes after Trump pardoned the criminals. Making their charges disappear wasn't enough. Now he's intent, in the best old Soviet way, of purging the federal government of anyone who might be seen as responsible for enforcing the rule of law. Bondi calls this squad of lawless reactionaries the Weaponization Working Group, the latest example of Team Trump's talent for accusing his enemies of doing exactly what he is doing more obnoxiously and aggressively than anyone. FBI agents seen as sympathetic to pursuing January 6 crimes, which is to say, those who follow their solemn obligation to enforce the law without fear or favor, are also reportedly being rooted out as those involved in Jack Smith's expansive and razor-sharp investigation into Trump's attempt to steal the 2020 election. A federal government that's supposed to follow the law is bending itself to the whims of its chief executive and the so-called conservatives who pitched a fit about a 2016 meeting between Bill Clinton and Loretta Lynch Don't bother. Too bad an eye at abuses that make that look like a poppy seed next to a boulder.
I mean, unfortunately, we see a lot of hypocrisy right now in the Donald Trump campaign when it comes to Steve Bannon. I mean, Steve Bannon is just a complete unscrupulous person. I think his political career has been marked with suspicion, just like Eric Adams. It's funny how they all walk in lockstep. And I think that it's just it's a miscarriage of justice. I mean, why is he getting off so easy? I think Steve Bannon has, unless, he's a witness providing a lot of information, because he does hold the key to a lot of information going on. I just think this is a sad state of affairs. Like, what are we playing, volley here? We have the Biden administration playing these tactics, and we're going back and forth now to the Trump administration. Doesn't make one better than the other. Again, I do support Trump. I support the Donald Trump administration, but I don't support all aspects of it. I want to see a better version, and I want to see Steve Bannon held accountable. And I'm sure you do too, Sal. I know your thoughts on that. I would like to see Steve Bannon front and center held accountable.
I think this was there's nothing you can do, because there was a dead end. The Justice Department wasn't cooperating anymore with this prosecution. But Steve Bannon will never be held accountable. There were plenty of people that went to jail, and they went to jail because they listened and followed Steve Bannon's lead. I guess that's the way the cookie crumbles. But we're seeing the same thing repeat itself again with Eric Adams. And it's funny that he used Artie Idala, which is Eric Adams' pal. That's one connection. He's also representing Ingrid Lewis-Martin, which is Eric Adams' chief advisor, now former chief advisor. At the New York Young Republican Gala, it was Steve Bannon that was throwing lifelines to Eric Adams. We all know that Boris Epstein, the chief legal advisor to President Trump, while he wasn't president, this guy came to prominence through Steve Bannon in the war room. He's also the reason ML Bove became a personal attorney, because he was hiring and firing people around Trump legally for the legal counsel. And ML Bove is a friend of Boris Epstein. So it's funny. The entire connect the dots here leads back to the same circle over and over again. And the way these events have unfolded really is leaving people raising their eyebrow and questioning, why are the Trump Justice Department and Trump himself and what is going on here, and why? Because it's Eric Adams who has affected the lives of numerous Trump supporters. And I won't lie, mine included, by terminating me and many others, but he is still fighting those cases in court when he could just drop his appeals. He's already lost that in court. But that's who Eric Adams really is. He likes to play both sides of the fence. And I think right here, although the article's a little skewed, it really is upset that Trump is trying to clean out the Justice Department, which is his prerogative. He can hire and fire who he wants as far as who is his employees. But the fact that there might have been some dubious actors who pushed something, whether you like it or not, that happened on January 6th, I think that's worth a look at. And if anybody did do something illegal, then they should be prosecuted. As far as Steve Bannon goes, I believe Steve Bannon was guilty. He's been guilty of a lot of things, but somehow this guy skates going to jail for years, while others that were around him and did the same thing have had their lives ruined. Sounds very familiar lately, doesn't it?
I got to say, I think you're spot on. I think the way you connected the dots and you put Boris Epstein at the middle of it, I think is fantastic. And I think that's where everybody needs to look. It's kind of like the 7 degrees of separation. So the way you connected those dots and show how it goes full circle, how we're not looking at that, I mean, that has unscrupulous behavior all over. We need to look at it. It just doesn't look right. And it doesn't take a savvy politician or someone that's into politics to say, okay, this just doesn't make sense. When are we going to have full accountability? And as you said, it is Trump's prerogative, but his prerogative has to be the best interest of the American people. So hopefully we move forward in the right direction. I do think if this Eric Adams fiasco is not handled properly, this could be the Achilles heel for Donald Trump.
Yeah, listen, I think this is going to come back around and bite him. And listen, on this show, we're saying myself, Eric, John McCarry, Marlon Bethel, we do, and the Files Unfiltered, we voted for President Trump 3 times. We do support him. But we're not in the cult of MAGA, and we're not sycophants. And when you do something wrong, you will be called out. no matter what side of the aisle you are. That's what makes this unbiased and fair. We can't lean one way or the other, but I'll tell you this. This has a lot of implications coming in 2 years. I've already stated how if I'm a Democrat, you could try to win back the House as far as Congress and the Senate. You might make damage in the midterms using Trump as now the president of corruption because he's siding with the guy that they threw overboard, Eric Adams, and you could trot out Damian Williams, who they keep referencing as this big bad guy, but he's never committed a crime. He's a squeaky clean guy, and he's very smart, and he was a prosecutor. He knows the case better than anyone. So it's up to you, President Trump. You can decide, do you want to side with the American people or you for your own personal vendettas or whatever it is you're doing? I would do what's in the best interest of the voter because that's who actually put you there. So I want to segue into the next thing, which I kind of referenced on a couple of shows ago, but I didn't actually go over this. So here was an article about an NYPD boss evading tolls, congestion pricing by commuting with department car. It's this Lieutenant Joseph Abdel-Messiah. Okay, so he went and did all these things. So I wrote this. This lieutenant is just the tip of the iceberg. This issue involves numerous NYPD members of service assigned to or previously to following NYPD officers: police commissioner, first deputy commissioner, chief of department, chief of patrol, a vast majority of the detective bureau. Former chief of department Jeffrey Madry's former detail would allegedly sign into work from the Highway 3 station house in Queens, including his executive assistant, Sergeant Sarah Shattuck, who allegedly signed into work every day from Highway 3 station house, then drove into One Police Plaza instead of just starting work from 1PP like everyone else has to do. If you check the command logs from Highway 3, there should be a plethora of illegal sign-ins by this sergeant and other staff on Madry's detail. Deputy Commissioner of Operations Kaz Daughtry allegedly would go present for duty from his home somehow instead of his office at 1PP. His NYPD security detail was forced to allegedly pick him up with his children. They are non-NYPD personnel, for people who don't understand this lingo, putting the city in serious liability if injured in a police car for any reason. To drop them off to their school, then drive Kaz Daughtry into One Police Plaza, where he should have been first to sign into work to begin with. Detective Kyle Kelly allegedly would also start his overtime shifts from home, since he worked closely and with the Dream Team. And the currently modified Deputy Chief Paul J. Saraceno would sign into work and start his shift allegedly from Staten Island every day, just like Kaz did from his home. It paid to be a part of the Dream Team, where misuse of taxpayer money and blatant corruption gets ignored. What does New York City indicted Mayor Eric Adams know about all of this? Did he approve this behavior and allocate the abuse in the city's NYPD budget? Maybe the Southern District of New York should look into this, since the Department of Investigation has done a piss-poor job at holding everyone accountable at the executive levels of this administration. Hashtag the Sal Greco Show. Hashtag the finest unfiltered. I will say this before you start. That lieutenant may or may not, his car, category 1, category 2, you could break that down. The fact that he did this, even though a deputy chief, what's her name, Victoria Perry, authorized him to do it, it's still illegal. And the fact that he went along with this, never notified Internal Affairs or the Department of Investigation, means that he himself is corrupt because he didn't report anything. He went along with it because he liked being a part of power structure and having perks. So he's guilty. I know many in the NYPD want to state otherwise. In a court of law, that won't work. Joe Cop talk won't work. So, Eric, you give us your thoughts.
So it's interesting you talk about perks. And so I like to ask the question, when does a perk become abusive? When does it become egregious? And when does it actually exceed the bounds and we start getting into this water of ethical issues, right? Because a perk is something to incentivize, to make people far more, better employees, right? Give them some type of incentive to do their job. Now, when it comes to this particular lieutenant, let me just preface it with this, right? So in the police department, there's actually an administrative guide that lays out the procedures and the policies for different types of unmarked vehicles that are assigned to personnel of the NYPD. You have a category 1 car, and I think it's pretty simple. It makes sense. If you're a commanding officer of a precinct, that unmarked car would be assigned to you. You could take that car in and out of the city. You could bring it home. Obviously, as a commanding officer, you're pretty much always on call. And at any point, you could get a call at home, start your tour of duty. You can respond to anywhere in the city. You can respond out of the state. It has something to do with an off-duty police officer of your command, something pressing, or you can respond to your command as well at all times of the night. So to me, I think that makes sense, right? Obviously, that's necessary. I have no issues if a commanding officer starts work from home. That's kind of incentivized that commanding officer to be involved in the game, and he's always on call. That's an inconvenience. So I have no issues if a commanding officer gets a phone call in the middle of the night and he picks up the phone, starts showering, getting ready for work. To me, it's okay for him to be on duty at that point. Now, a Category 2 car is for particular assignments within the police department where people may be needed to go to different parts of the borough, at different boroughs, in different bureaus within the NYPD. Now, so this particular article leaves out a lot of context when it comes to this lieutenant. According to this article, based on my observations, this lieutenant is assigned what's considered a Category 2 car. He has the ability to take that car in and around anywhere in the city he needs to. So we have to infer and think he's possibly on call. I don't know why you need to be on call in community affairs, but let's say, okay, maybe he goes to situations of unrest, but he's assigned to Manhattan. And the issue here that comes up in this article is that he lives in Staten Island and he parks his car at the teleport, which is the youth division at the teleport in Staten Island, which is 6 miles from his home. So is that a perk? Is that something to incentivize him? Now, if he actually has business at that location, Staten Island, I have no problem with it. If he starts his tour there because he has business there and then he's using the phone the entire time as he's traveling an hour or an hour and a half into Manhattan because of traffic, then I have no issues. But if he just parked it there just because he can, and then he drives to Manhattan and starts his tour, and he's about 2 hours into it, not doing anything, well, then I have an issue. I don't believe it's all out corruption. I do believe it's misconduct. But according to this article, he was given the authority to park his car and start his tour at the location. So the question is, who gave him that authority and why? And Victoria Perry is the one in charge. And we know that she was promoted by rocket fuel because of nepotism and cronyism within this administration. So I think the problem falls on leadership. I don't have an issue with this lieutenant. If he was told and authorized that he could do it, well, then the problem is with the leadership of that. What I do have, when we talk about perks, and we talk about abuse, and talk about ethical issues, is the credible rumors we have heard about Kaz Daughtry, Deputy Commissioner of Operations, who's tied to Eric Adams by rocket fuel of his promotion and nepotism, where it's reason to believe that Kaz Daughtry has his security detail, which we don't even know why he has a security detail. That's another issue. But has a security detail, pick him up with his children, bring his children to school, and then actually report for work. Now, that I have an issue. Once in a while, I don't see a problem. You're Kaz Daughtry, Deputy Commissioner of Operations, you get a call, and it's last minute, and you start your tour, you happen to be you're taking your kids to school, you've been inconvenienced. I have no issues with that. But to do that constantly, just because you can, and bring your kids to school, I have a problem with that. Because I think about the female police officers assigned to the NYPD. And there's numerous NYPD female police officers that have to pump their breath for 2 hours before they get to work. And then take their kids to school. And it's about a 3-hour operation. And they have to be on time to work. And they don't have those perks. So I have an issue. To me, that violates those ethical issues.
Yeah, man, look, you make some good points. But overall, when you're asked, whether in an interview or in a courtroom, Lieutenant Abdelmissa, you had permission from who? Victoria Perry. What is your training and what does a patrol guy tell you to do? Is it say you can park the car and avoid tolls and do all this stuff? No, you have to actually sign into where you work. Oh, so she authorized it. You didn't have a problem with this. You don't see that she's actually violating the patrol guide. So you didn't notify Internal Affairs or the Department of Investigation. You just went along because you want to be part of power structure. And that's where he will be found guilty of whatever you want to hang on him. I understand in the grand scheme of things, he's the lowest fruit on the totem pole. But the article starts with him, and I put out all these other people and other officers that have done the same, if not worse. Kaz Daughtry being the worst. How do you sign in from your home? Allegedly, Saraceno did the same thing. And I hear these guys always say, oh, they're great. They're great cops. Oh, they ignored when I, was late 10 minutes, so they didn't say anything. So they're great people. No, you can't excuse this kind of behavior because this guy could get away with it. Kaz Daughtry gets away with it. Everybody gets away with whatever they want. But The poor officer that was off post like a half a block. The poor officer that comes in with white socks, doesn't have his whistle, and is getting charged. That guy has no reprieve. What's his excuse? He's going to get destroyed. So the rules don't apply to some people, but they apply very harshly to others, especially if you're not having any ties to the cronies or nepotism. And now I'm going to read this article and show you a video with this, Eric, and I'm going to get your take on this because this will be this is a brand new article and a brand new case that's upcoming. And it's brought to you by Eric Sanders, once again, my attorney. He's also the attorney of Lieutenant Quatisha Epps. And this is a new lawsuit. NYPD assault. Legal filing alleges inaction by Mayor Adams and top police officials. It's a press release. 4 men filed notice of claim alleging NYPD officers targeted them without cause, assaulting one, and attempted to obstruct evidence. A notice of claim has been formally filed with the New York Comptroller's Office on behalf of claimants Benjamin A. Try, Alistair Alexander, Wilfred R. Try, and Harold B. Thomas, alleging racially discriminatory policing practices, unconstitutional stops, excessive force, and wrongful arrests by officers of the New York City Police Department. The filing details a December 7, 2024 incident in Queens where claimants were unlawfully stopped, physically assaulted, and detained without legal justification. Allegations and notice of claim. The notice of claim alleges that on December 7, 2024, at approximately 4 a.m., claimants Benjamin A. Try, Alistair Alexander, Wilfred R. Try, and Harold B. Thomas were legally traveling in a 2021 Mercedes-Maybach sedan S580 and New York registration KZY 2940 in Queens when they became the targets of an unlawful and discriminatory police stop. The claim asserts that the claimants had recently patronized Starlets of New York, located at 4909 25th Avenue, Woodside, New York, 11377, and were proceeding northwest on 25th Avenue toward 49th Street when they were subjected to what they describe as a racially motivated pretextual stop. There's a picture of the car. It's hilarious. It's actually a nice car. According to the notice of claim, claimant Try, the driver, observed an unmarked dark vehicle ahead of him and another behind him, maneuvering in a manner that appeared to box in his vehicle. Upon reaching a traffic light at 49th Street, claimant Try initiated a right turn onto 49th Street heading northeast. Immediately after completing the turn, the dark vehicle suddenly activated their emergency lights, signaling for claimant Try to stop. The notice of claim asserts that this vehicle stop was unlawful and racially motivated, lacking responsible suspicion or probable cause. The claim further states that an unidentified male approached the driver's side window and declared that the tint on the windows was too dark. The individual, later identified as police officer Brian A. Guzman, shield number 22997, tax registry number 971080, then ordered claimant Try to exit the vehicle. However, Officer Guzman failed to use a tint meter to measure the visible light transmission, VTL, percentage of the windows as required under the New York Vehicle and Traffic Law, VTL 375-12A2, rendering any issue citation unenforceable and unconstitutional. The claimants allege that the traffic stop was pretextual and based solely on an officer's subjective visual estimation, which does not meet the legal standard for enforcement. The notice of claims alleges that the NYPD routinely applies window tint laws disproportionately against Black and Latino drivers as justification for stop searches and interrogations in a pattern of racial profiling. Escalation and use of excessive force. As the stop escalated, Sergeant Emir M. Ferrer, shield number 2512, tax registry number 943232, approached the passenger side and aggressively ordered claimant Alexander to exit the vehicle, shouting, "Get the F out of the car." Claimant Harold and Thomas, not understanding what was occurring, attempted to display Police Benevolent Association PBA cards with Sergeant Ferrer discarded. At that moment, claimant Alexander heard a commotion and observed claimant Thomas falling out of the vehicle and landing on the ground near the curb. He saw multiple NYPD officers surrounding claimant Thomas, who was face down on the pavement, while Police Officer Guzman and Police Officer Anthony N. Riccardi, shield number 13105, tax registry number 970134, repeatedly punched him in the head, face, and body. The notice of claim further alleges that while this assault occurred, Sergeant Ferrer and Lieutenant Andrew C. Dixon, tax registry number 943170, stood idly by and did not intervene. Claimant Alexander, who was recording the incident, asserts that several officers, including Sergeant Ferrero, used flashlights to obstruct his camera view. Additionally, officers allegedly turned off their body-worn cameras to conceal their actions. The notice of claim also states that Lieutenant Dixon falsely denied that officers had struck claimant Thomas. False arrest and prolonged detention. The notice of claim states that the driver, claimant Traee, was handcuffed and ultimately issued a summons for a VTL 375-12-A2 window tint violation despite police officer Guzman failing to measure the tint with a legally required tint meter. And as you can see, there is the summons, which I know very well. Claimant Thomas was charged with obstructing governmental administration and resisting arrest despite not physically interfering with police activity. Claimant Traee, the driver, and claimant Thomas were transported to the 114 precinct where Traee was detained in a holding cell for several hours before being released with a universal summons. Thomas was allegedly held for 7.5 hours in a holding cell before being transferred to Queens Central Booking, where he remained for an additional 10 hours. At claimant Thomas's arraignment before the Honorable Edward Daniel in Criminal Court Part AR3, docket number CR-042168-24QN, his case was adjourned in contemplation of dismissal, ACD, without his consent. Harold Thomas transcript. Post-arrest allegations and city's response. The notice of claims alleges that on the morning of December 7, 2024, claimant Thomas's mother, retired NYPD detective second grade Ela Thomas, quality assurance, was denied visitation at the 114 precinct in what is described as an attempt to suppress evidence of the brutal police assault. Later that afternoon, claimant Thomas's father, retired NYPD detective first grade Harold Thomas Sr., Joint Terrorism Task Force, engaged in discussion with Mayor Eric L. Adams, former Chief of Department Jeffrey Madry, and former Chief of Internal Affairs Miguel A. Iglesias. These officials allegedly admitted to reviewing multiple body-worn camera videos, including footage from police officer Riccardi, and confirmed that none of the claimants had violated any laws. However, despite acknowledging the lack of any legal justification for the arrest or use of force, no action was taken against the officers, and the matter was not referred to the Queens District Attorney's Office Public Corruption Bureau of the U.S. Attorney's Office or the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York. And it says officer profiles. And this is notice of claims details prior documented misconduct allegation against the officer involved in the incident. That's Lieutenant Andrew C. Dixon, a history of excessive force complaints, racial bias, lawsuits related to civil rights violations. Sergeant Yamir M. Ferrer has had multiple substantial allegations of excessive force, unlawful stops, retaliatory summonses. Officer Brian A. Guzman has been named in multiple lawsuits with financial settlements related to excessive force and civil rights violations. Police officer Anthony N. Riccardi has been accused of failure to provide legally required identification, excessive force, reinforcing patterns of misconduct. And then it goes on here. It says the statistical data, pattern of misconduct, similar cases of civil rights. It mentions Eric Garner, Delwan Small, so on and so forth. And legal claims asserted: Fourth Amendment violations, 14th Amendment violations, false arrest, unlawful detention, excessive force and police brutality, racial profiling, selective enforcement, failure to intervene, malicious prosecution, retaliation for exercising constitutional rights, Monell liability, municipal liability, and New York City local laws, New York City human rights law, and an administrative code. The Sanders firm demands immediate accountability of the NYPD's egregious civil rights violation, the brutal assault, false arrest, racial profiling detail in this case reflect a systematic failure in policing oversight. He calls on Mayor Adams, Jessica Tisch to launch an independent investigation to the involved officers and their supervisors, the Queen District Attorney and U.S. Eastern District to pursue criminal charges against officers who engaged in or facilitated assault and false arrest, New York City Council and state legislation to strengthen overseeing past reforms preventing their racial profile and excessive force. Community members and civil rights advocates demand transparency, justice, and systematic change. We will not tolerate unchecked police violence and will pursue every legal avenue to hold the city of New York accountable. This is Eric Adams' statement, Eric Sanders' statement. The violent and unconstitutional treatment of these four men by the NYPD is a direct violation of their civil rights and another glaring example of racial profiling and police brutality. The officers involved acted with impunity, escalating a baseless stop into a violent assault while supervisors failed to intervene. The case is not an isolated incident. It is part of a deeply entrenched pattern of misconduct. The failure to discipline or prosecute officers who engage in excessive force and false arrests only emboldens further violations. We will fight relentlessly for justice, accountability, and civil rights protections for all New Yorkers. So let me play this video, and then I'll get your take, Eric.
I'm recording.
Yo, bro, you punched my face?
Yeah.
Why are you punching me?
Why is he punching him?
Why are you punching me? Back up. Back up. Just back up, okay? Just back up.
No problem.
Back up, sir. Back up a little bit. Sir, back up a little bit.
I backed up. Don't try to block the view. He's punching him.
I was getting out of the car. I didn't need your help.
And he's telling him, shut the fuck
I'm
up.
not doing anything. I'm not doing anything. What are you doing? You're not going to find anything. My license is valid. Hurry up, please. We can go, bro.
Don't move. Don't move. I recorded this. He punched him for no reason.
He punched me in the face, man.
I know. Yo, shoot him, please. Because he didn't resist nothing. Y'all punched him. There was no reason to punch him and arrest him.
Shooting him.
I said punch him. I didn't say shoot him. Listen to me clearly. I said he punched him. He didn't shoot him. He punched him for no reason. That's all wrong. Yo, don't worry. I'm recording it. He punched you for no reason. He punched him. There's no reason to punch him. He didn't resist nothing. He came out the car. Y'all punched him. I'm recording it all. Y'all are wrong. This is the problem with y'all. Y'all too aggressive. There is no reason to punch this man. Don't turn your camera. Put your camera back on. Put your camera on. Yeah, because you punch him for no reason. Look at him standing there clearly. He's not resisting nothing. There is no reason to punch this man. Y'all punching minorities for no reason.
Hey, stay back.
I'm back.
Everything's being recorded. I'm glad she got
Y'all punch him for no reason.
Nobody.
Yes, he did punch him. Y'all punch him in the side.
He was resisting.
No, he didn't resist. He was on the ground. He was on the ground. He was on the ground. I have it recorded. He was on the ground. There was no resist. There was no resist. He was on the ground. Stop. Stop lying. He was on the ground. He was on the ground. His family is police. He was on the ground. There was no resistance. And he was punching him on the ground. I have it recorded. Don't do that. Y'all lying. Y'all are lying, bro. This is crazy. Y'all are lying.
Listen in. How you gonna tell me, man?
Don't say nothing.
What you telling me don't hurt?
Yo, don't say nothing. Don't say nothing. Stop talking to them. We're going to sue. Don't talk. Because you know what they're doing. He lied and said he didn't. The man was on the ground. He's punching him. There was no reason to punch him. Yes.
They're not doing nothing wrong. They're not doing shit. Pull me over, nigga.
There's nothing in the car. So y'all gonna feel y'all are gonna feel foolish. I'm recording it all. Y'all are gonna feel y'all are gonna pay me. I'm not gonna have to work. This is crazy. There's nothing in the car. Y'all punching a man while he's on the ground and say he wasn't punching. He didn't resist nothing. Put him in the car. Something is wrong with y'all. This is what I'm saying.
We just got here.
I'm not saying you, but your other friends, they doing this. We're going home. We didn't shoot nobody. We didn't have a fight. We didn't have nothing. Why are y'all messing with us? Why? I understand it's not you because y'all weren't. I understand it's not you. I'm not even putting you on camera. It's not you. It's these white guys because they're racist. Because they see a fancy car and they're racist. That's who it is.
Eric, what do you think after seeing that? What are your thoughts on all of that, knowing all the facts of what's going on there with Eric Adams and company behind that, and know about that and say that there's no response from them?
Well, here's what I see. I mean, I've been involved in numerous force cases, plenty, and I've deployed punches myself plenty of times. I never stomped anybody on the ground. Unlike what we saw from the khaki pantsuit. Never. I have punched people before. I have deployed strikes. Sometimes it's necessary. It's ugly. But what we're missing from this video is extreme out of context. So how do we get to the floor? What happened before then? I have what's in the lawsuit. I understand that. I think a lot of the stuff about the racial bias, I think that is complete conjecture that's mostly involved. So we can't prove that they're racist or anything like that. But what I would like to see is the complete context. So I think on behalf of the New York City Police Department, we talk about transparency. And this is administration that lacks transparency. They should just put out the body camera footage from all perspectives, from every police officer who was there, and then we could make a determination and then make a public announcement. But based on this, I don't believe there's enough context. I can't say at this point that those punches were necessary or not. But according to them, according to what the lieutenant is saying at that point, that he's resisting, we see he's on the ground. I do not see his hands are cuffed at that point yet. So it's tough to make a determination without context. We need more context of how we got there and how he was actively resisting. But I think that transparency is key. Release that body camera footage so we can actually make a proper determination.
I would like to see the body camera footage myself. To me, this doesn't look good only because one guy went over a cop to go over to his back to punch him. I mean, what is that about? It's not like he's on the ground kicking and screaming. You have him already handcuffed. I don't see why you got to punch the guy in the head or the face. But again, I mean, this is like the Wild Wild West out here, some of these guys. And it's funny how the guys that came in said, we don't know anything. Like, we had nothing to do with this. So they want nothing to do with that entire scene. And by the way, though, Eric, the summons is issued falsely because if you don't have a tit meter, I know this. I had to work in citywide traffic where all these guys did for a living was write that you needed a tint meter. You can't just write that summon. It'll be dismissed. So then your stop was for what? Other than you think. I'm going to go out on a limb. I think that stop was done because they thought this car would have something in it. They saw a Maybach. And then they pull over. They start talking to them. They think they have something, and there's nothing there.
Well, that's where I have a problem. So I did intrusive police work the majority of my entire career, doing anti-crime and special operations, plain clothes, doing intrusive police work. So under the case of People versus the Board, being intrusive when you are detaining someone for the purpose of getting an illegal firearm, they should just address that, right? But unfortunately, what's happening here is contributing factors, right? We have a lack of leadership, inept leadership. We have a lack of training. We have police officers that are doing intrusive police work that really don't understand how to do it, while simultaneously they lack the training. There's no support from the legislation system. So at this point, we have police officers doing intrusive police work that really don't know how to do it. And what they're doing is they look for probable cause for a violation to lead them to something else. And that's what I believe what's happening here. I believe that they saw a car tinted up, which is a traffic infraction. And in my opinion, you could actually make that you could make that assessment based on your observation. I have testified personally in traffic court, and I've actually testified personally in gun cases where I did not have a tint meter. But based on my experience, I could see that tint was excessive and had less than 70% light transmittal, right? Which is what you need in New York State. You need 70% light transmittal. So you can make that based on your observations. And I was also trained with tint meter, which doesn't say much. You use it for 2 seconds and document that you train with it. But I think that they should actually just say that. And Eric Sanders lays out in the complaint that they used a legal justification of a pretextual stop to look for something further. And I think that's what they should articulate. And that's the problem. They should just be transparent. But I believe they probably lack the training. And it comes down to the leadership under Eric Adams. They need to express that, hey, I have a traffic infraction. Maybe the car is weighing down other factors. Maybe they're working in an area that's been plagued by shootings. They have informants that are giving credible information about potential adversaries or persons of interest, subjects in possession of illegal firearms. And then based on all these contributing factors, you conduct a stop. And then once that door opens and you make an observation on that occupant, some behavioral indicators of an illegal firearm, you take him out of the car. That would be documented as a stop under the case of People versus the Board, which is a level 3 intrusive stop. You stop someone based on reasonable suspicion. But what I see based on this complaint, so based on the complaint, is that there's a traffic infraction, and then they utilize that to get to that next step. So that's where the problem is. I don't necessarily believe that's corruption. I believe that's a training issue. And as far as do we have people in those positions that are suitable? I watched that video. It was kind of dark. I could not tell if the subject was in cuffs or not. I did see the punches. So if the person was in cuffs, that's another question. However, there are times, unfortunately, sometimes people cuffed can still be a threat. You still have two legs. And there's still other ways. I mean, I've had female perpetrators in handcuffs grab me by the groin while they were cuffed. I've had, there are situations. At the same token, if he was not a threat, he was under complete control at that point, then those punches would be not necessary. But again, let's see the body camera. Let's release those body cameras, and then we can put this to bed.
Yeah, Eric, I find it odd that, of course, it was people that know Eric Adams personally called Eric Adams, called Miguel Iglesias and Jeffrey Madry, and they're just standing around and don't do. I mean, you hold a guy in a cell for all that time. Was there a force report done? The TRR report? Was there an ambulance called? You punched the guy in the face. I guess all of that will be to be determined. Although we know we don't have any, there is nothing there right for the moment. One last thing before you go, I have to hit this. I posted this. Is the NYPD or the DOI ever going to investigate NYPD members of service for constantly associating with people reasonably believed to or have engaged in criminal activity, or is it just a Sal Greco rule pertaining to if associated with Roger Stone? My lawyer is asking. And look, here's this guy, Joe and Patrice and Joe Ayala, the guy that runs the Spanish Society. Here they are with Steve Bannon. I mean, I'm pretty sure you just heard what happened to him. Here they are with Rudy Giuliani. Rudy Giuliani's been engaged in criminal activity, apparently. I mean, he's been in and out of court for it. There's the illustrious Jimmy Rodriguez, the self-made criminal mob associate and manager of Connoisseur. And here's, again, Jimmy Rodriguez. Eric, what do you think? Does this rule apply to everyone, or is it just being applied to Sal Greco? I mean, how does this rule even work?
The NYPD should just completely eradicate this policy of criminal association. We know that they modified it, amended in the NYPD patrol guide as a knee-jerk reaction to the case of Sal Greco yourself against the city of New York, along with the police department, along with numerous characters of this administration. Criminal association should not be a policy anymore. I've said this for years, and I'll continue to say it. To me, it should just be common sense. It's a very common, to me, it's common sense of who you should associate with or who you should not with when you're doing law enforcement. And based on your associations, could these people have a negative impact on your ability to conduct public safety or to do your career with integrity? To me, this is common sense. But again, let's talk about the hypocrisy of it. You were wrongfully terminated with your connection to Roger Stone, your friendship, where Roger Stone was pardoned. So no longer, if you receive a pardon, no longer is he actually considered criminal. And yet, Steve Bannon just wasn't held accountable. That's different. We see a picture with Jimmy Rodriguez. His entire life has been plagued with criminal activity. Jimmy Rodriguez hangs around with nefarious characters. So yet we have law enforcement officers that are part of, have their own advocacy groups supporting cops. And yet they didn't support you, Sal Greco. They didn't support you for having a friendship with Roger Stone. But yet they befriend and associate with nefarious characters who have a likelihood to continue committing crime, especially Jimmy Rodriguez. I mean, that's all we hear about. We heard about it from a mobster talking about Jimmy Rodriguez. We have had nothing further, and yet we just see complete hypocrisy. So you know what? If you're a police officer out there and you're not standing up for Sal Greco right now, you have to ask yourself, how do you view the world?
Well, I'm going to say this. The criminal association rule, I think, is arbitrarily applied. We will see our day in court. And obviously, I have plenty of ammo to throw back at the New York City Police Department because it seems that the rules only apply to certain individuals. Eric, thanks for coming on the show. It's been a riveting hour. Once again, check out Eric Dym. What's your handle on X and on Instagram?
So check it out at Eric Dym Cop, of course. If you want to check me out myself on social media, on Instagram and also X. I predominantly spend my time on X. But of course, check out the Finest Unfiltered, New York's Finest Retired Unfiltered podcast with myself and John McCary. You can find John D. McCary on X and IG. And of course, our brother and family, Sal Greco. He has a show, 12:05. Awesome show by Sal Greco. Our shows are in the morning, Monday through Friday, 8:05. We have Check out Marlon Bethel, who does a lot of background work for us, right? On Instagram and X. Fire detective for wrongfully terminated for not succumbing to the vaccine mandate. And of course, we have Jack Stern behind the scenes doing production. Check him out. And now we have a new show. We had a pilot, and that was The Executive Perspective. That's with Ron Layson and Rob Lukesh, former executives of the New York City Police Department. So we're growing, and thank you to Sal Greco. I appreciate it. Sal, always a good show. Pleasure.
Thank you, Eric. Thank you all for watching. This has been another riveting show, and keep at it on the Finest Unfiltered channel. We're going to have a lot more material and a lot more shows coming forward. And with that, I'm going to say, everybody, have a good rest of your Friday. Have a happy weekend, a good weekend. Drink responsibly. Be responsible out there. And we'll see you next week. Until then, adios.